Getting started with your family history can be overwhelming. The more popular the hobby becomes, the more information abounds. Just do a simple Google search and you'll probably give up. And too much information that we're not ready for can leave us paralyzed. Now, if you've got some family history experience, please consider in this short video whether what you're doing right now is working for you. So the first thing that you want to do is to set the scope of what you're trying to do. Decide how far out are you going to explore your tree? Are you going to do just direct lines, which is your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents, and so on? Or are you also going to do their spouses? What about cousins, nieces, nephews? How broad is your tree going to be? And then you have to decide how far back are you going to go? How tall is your tree going to be? Are you going to go back just 4 generations, maybe 5 generations, back to the 1800s, the 1600s, arrival in the country until you hit a brick wall and then you'll just stop? You can change your mind and broaden this later, but you need to start with a scope or you won't know when to stop. And if you don't know when to stop, that is just as much of a problem as not knowing when to begin. Beware of the evil scope creep. If you stumble into things that are outside of the scope that you set, avoid going down that road. Make a note of it. Say, consider exploring descendants of so-and-so, and then go right back to your initial scope. So start with what you know. You probably know more than you think you do, and you can use this My Family booklet, but you can also just use a piece of paper and start sketching it out. I know my mom's name is or was. I know she was born on this day in this place. I know that my parents got married in this year or in this place. I know that my dad was born. I know my grandparents. Like, what do you already know? And you'll find that you realize as you start thinking about it that your brain will bring things to your memory that you didn't realize you did know. Next, decide on what you want to learn based on what's missing. You need a goal, right? So let's say you know when your mom was born, but you don't know when your dad was born, or you know where your mom was born, but not know when your dad was born. So you can say, who were the children of my great-grandparents? Or I want to create a 4-generation chart. Next, choose a source for that information. Where is it most likely to be found? Now, don't worry, this comes with practice. I've put some screenshots in here of some of the records that I've been working with in a project that I'm doing of descendants of my great-grandparents. On the far left, that blue document you see, this is my great-grandparents' marriage record that I wrote away for. This is a map of the town that they lived in that actually I found on the Library of Congress website. This is a screenshot of a census. This is an obituary of my great uncle. This is the will of my great-great-great-grandfather. So you'll find all kinds of different records, and you'll need to find records to match the question that you have, right? If you have a question about different things, if I have a question about when my grandparents were married, then that is something that will be answered by a marriage record. But it may also be answered to some extent in a census, and it may also be answered in an obituary or even on a headstone. Again, don't worry, this comes with practice. But this step of finding a source for that information is important. The next step is use what you do find to fill in more information. So I got this marriage record of my great-grandparents, and what I was really looking for was the official date of their marriage, which is on here. They actually got the license the same day that they got married. But it had so much other information. Look, it had the birthplace of my great-grandparents. It had their parents' names, including the maiden name of my great-great-grandmother. It had their ages. It had the names of the witnesses. There was lots of information there. So when you get a document or you find a source, don't just look at it for what you wanted. Look at it for what it also has that you weren't necessarily looking for. And then you go back to step 2 and decide what you want to learn. So let's say I answered a question and now I realize, you know what, I'm still missing the first name of my great-great-grandfather. Work on one goal at a time in the beginning, at least as much as possible. That will help keep your path straight. The more experience you get, it's fine to have a bunch of branches going at one time, but in the beginning, just juggle one ball. Don't try to keep 15 up in the air. Now, if you hit a spot where you can't go on because you need a document, then order that document and set a calendar alert to check in on it if you haven't received it, and move on to a different goal. So let's say I needed this marriage document of my great-great aunt. I decided, okay, I need to order that. And they said it would take 6 weeks. I put a calendar tickler for 8 weeks because it's the government. And then in 8 weeks, if I don't have it, then I ping them or set another reminder. But in the meantime, I go work on something else. You want to either give yourself a deadline or set times that you want to work on it. So you might say, I want to complete my family generation chart by July 1st. Or I'm going to work on my family history for 15 minutes a week on Sunday afternoons at 4 o'clock. Now, you won't always be able to do it, right? Life will get in the way, but just having that set time set aside will keep it front of mind. You want to break larger goals down into smaller goals. So have this as a goal, order your grandfather's Social Security application, rather than fill out everything anybody could possibly ever want to know on my grandfather. That's just too broad. Break those large goals into smaller goals to make them more manageable and doable and achievable. Keep track of your goals and your achievements, and you may want to do that in a digital format, or you may want to do it in a paper format. And for more on organizing your genealogy, see our video on organizing your genealogy. But those are just the quick tips you need to get started. And they're really, really simple. Start with what you know, set your scope, set goals, break those goals into manageable pieces, and set aside a specific time or set a goal for yourself on when it will be done. Hopefully these tips have been helpful to you, and we want to wish you the best of luck in climbing your family tree.